right, guys, today we're going to start our holiday project. We're going to be making some stacked ornaments. So what we're going to use today is a compass to make different size circles. And we're going to use a pencil and a Sharpie for the first step of this project. So you're going to decide how you want these ornaments to look. I've seen people fill up their entire paper with ornaments, so they're like kind of like a real close-up of the ornaments, or I've seen people kind of make like little stacks of ornaments, you know, so it kind of looks like there's a pile. It's up to you, but we want to make sure that we are showing some of these elements of art. So for this step of this project, we're going to be working with the elements space and form, and we'll work with a couple of the other elements on the next step of this project, but today we're focusing on space and form. So to show space, we're going to overlap some of our ornaments, and to show form, we're going to be adding some cross hatching, and I'll show you how to do that. So first thing you need to do is decide where you want your first ornament that's going to be a full circle. So to use our compass, you first decide how big you want your circle to be and how far apart your pencil is to your center point. That's half of your circle. So if this is how big I have or how far apart I have these two, just keep in mind your circle is actually going to be about this big to my finger, okay? Because this is only half the width of your circle. So I think I might make it a smidge skinnier. And I'm going to find where I want my first full ornament to be. So I think I'm going to put it, actually maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to make a circle, and to do this, sometimes I find it easier to spin my paper. And I know that's probably hard to see, okay? But you can see my little circle. Then you're basically just going to start filling up your paper with these ornaments. Now, like I said, I think I want to just fill up my whole paper, but you can of course stack them and kind of make them look like they're a pile. But what you're going to do is just find another spot for your next ornament, and they will probably, some of them will start to overlap each other. And you want to stop your circle. You can see it, they didn't overlap too much, but I didn't make this circle go through this one, and I'll show you a little bit better here in a second. But we're overlapping them so our paper is full of ornaments. And what you can also do is change the sizes of your ornaments. Maybe you want some big ornaments, some small ornaments. So change your sizes by just squeezing this smaller or squeezing it bigger, right? So maybe I'll put a little bit of a smaller one right here. And like I said, I'm gonna fill up my paper. So I'll just do a time lapse now of you watching me fill up my paper with my circles of different sizes. Okay, so you can see I've totally filled up my paper. Now it's time to go through and add some of the little hooks on the ornaments. Now, of course, if this is just a pile of ornaments, you're not going to see all the hooks of all of them because maybe some of them would be upside down. So you just kind of have to decide which ones are going to have hooks, which one aren't. And I don't go too crazy with the hooks. All I do is I draw a little rectangle with a little hook that comes off the top, like that. Okay, so like I said, you wouldn't be able to see all of them, and also keep in mind that not all of them are going to be facing the same direction. So maybe not all of the hooks are going to be at the top. Maybe some of them, like this one, maybe the hook can be down at the bottom. Like that, like maybe that ornament's been thrown in the pile upside down, okay? So I'm going to go through and add some hooks to some of these. Okay, I think that might be enough hooks. So now what we want to do is we want to go through and add form. So form is what makes something look like it's a three-dimensional shape. So right now these all look very flat. We want to make these look like they have highlights and shadows on them. And we'll also do that with our paint. But right now we want to go through and add little highlights and little cross hatches for shadows. So to add highlights, it has to be on the same side of every single ornament. So keep in mind, you have to just decide where do you want your imaginary light to be coming from. So I think I'm going to have it look like my light is coming from like this top corner, which means the top left corner of every single ornament needs to have a little highlight. And a highlight just kind of looks like a little triangle, kind of like that. But you can see my highlight kind of follows the shape of my ornament. It shouldn't just be like a square when your ornament is round, because your highlight would be rounded, right? So you have to go through and add that highlight in that same position. So see how it's on kind of like the top left corner of this ornament? So that means it has to be in that spot in all of the ornaments. So then it looks like it's a realistic highlight all coming from the same place, because it's not realistic if a highlight is on a different spot in every ornament, because there wouldn't be a million lights shining on the same space. So I'll probably time lapse this part so you can kind of see me adding my highlights. And remember, your highlights would overlap as well. So you can see this little ornament goes behind this. The highlight would also go behind that little ornament. We're gonna add cross hatching as well, but just so you guys aren't confused, I'm gonna start going over things with my Sharpie. I'm just gonna go over every single line with my Sharpie, and once I've done that, then I'll show you guys how to cross hatch, because right now I feel like with all the pencil lines going on my paper, if I also add the cross hatching, it would be hard for you to kind of see what I was doing. So what I'll do is I'll do everything that I have right now in Sharpie, and then I'll do my cross hatching with pencil so you can kind of see the difference, okay? So I'm gonna go over all of my lines very carefully, making sure not to be sloppy. There are all my ornaments, and you can see now a little bit better. All my highlights are coming from this direction. Oops, this one needs a highlight. Oop. it almost like stands out pretty well when there's one without one now, because they all have their highlights coming from the same direction. So now we want to continue to emphasize form. So now we want to add cross hatching to show shading. So cross hatching is a way to show shading without color. It's a way to show shading with a Sharpie, for instance. So because our highlights are coming from this direction, our shadows would be from the opposite direction. So our shadows would be on the bottom right corner of everything. And also maybe where something might be overlapping, you can imagine that there would be a shadow. So like if my hand is here and this hand is here, this hand is probably making a shadow on this part of the hand underneath, right? So I'm going to start adding cross-hatching, and cross-hatching is just lines going in one direction and then lines going in the other direction. That's cross-hatching. So we're going to add that anywhere where we are trying to show shading. And cross-hatching doesn't have to be perfect. It can be a little bit more messy. And like I said earlier, we will also be adding shading with our actual paints, and that will just kind of emphasize this cross-hatching that we already have going on. So this is a great place to add shading, because look at all of these ornaments that are overlapping. This little area would definitely be in a shadow. And I try to make my lines not too bold. Like when I was outlining, I was, making nice, strong, thick lines. But now I'm kind of not worrying if they're kind of uneven or thin, because like I said, this can be a little bit messier. So lines going in one direction, lines going in the opposite direction. Okay, last thing of this step is to make sure we go through and erase any of those pencil lines that we can still see from our original sketches. All right, guys, there's our first step. Our next step will be to add our paints and add our shadows.